real thing to you?
Absolutely. I'm glad that that's where we got started. So I think, first of all, welcome Raúl Ibáñez to our Legends of Dade series of conversations. We can start by first saying that we believe that you qualify squarely as that, as a legend of Miami-Dade, for all sorts of reasons that we're going to get into. But you, just to kind of do some quick bio, you were actually born in New York, if we did our homework correctly, right?
You did.
To Cuban parents?
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? Who are your parents?
So my parents both have passed away, but amazing people. My mom was an accountant in Cuba. My dad was a chemist in Cuba. Both fled Castro's regime and landed in New York. My uncle was living in L.A. at the time, but he moved to Miami. He had come before my parents from Cuba. So when he moved to Miami, my mom and my dad packed up, and I was probably a year old, and they moved to Miami.
So you born in New York, like a lot of Cubans, the two immigration points, Miami and New York and Tampa, but made your way down to Miami and are pretty much a Miamian ever since then, if we're reading the storyline correct, right?
Oh, no, yeah, I consider myself, no, I'm Miami through and through. I was just born in New York.
Right.
Great city, loved it, got to play there for a year, but Miami's home.
Good. Where did you grow up here in Miami?
West Kendall. Grew up in a small neighborhood right down the street from McMillan Junior High, middle school now. It's called Royal Green.
And where were your first Miami baseball memories? Where did you start playing organized baseball?
My first, Tamiami Park. So I grew up playing at Tamiami Park. I always wanted to play at Flagami back then because my brothers were older. We used to live out near Coral Terrace, out near where Brothers to the Rescue Park, Flagami is now. And I didn't get to play there because we moved over to Royal Green, so got enrolled at Tamiami Park. I still remember the first time I went to a tryout, my brother on a yellow 10-speed riding me up that big hill over Tamiami Park and going down. I'm on the handlebars, like super, just stuff that we did, like kind of like riding with no seatbelts on, with stuff that we'd never let our kids do now. And I still remember seeing the fields look like this beautiful oasis, and that was my first organized tryout.
And once you kind of started that journey, you just kind of, did it keep going from there? Where would you now go play that next level of, for me, it was the Boys and Girls Club, but with that level where the baseball gets more serious, where did you play that baseball?
Boys and Girls Club. I played, we used to play the regular season, then we'd go and play Pony League.
Okay.
And you'd get recruited out of Pony League to either Bacuad, Latin American, I want to say it was like the Lions Club and Boys Club. And I wound up getting recruited to go to the Boys Club. It was a guy named Pepe Ariola, Joe Ariola's team. And that was a totally different level of baseball. That's when I realized I had a lot of work to do.
What, do you remember the name of that team?
Avanti.
Yeah. So same team as Mike Lowell?
Probably. I'm a few years older than Mike, so yeah, probably.
How interesting. So that's your first journey to Boys and Girls Club, which we talked about a little bit on one of the earlier episodes, but what a special thing that Boys and Girls Club environment. It was the first time I played and there was stuff on the line, like you're waiting to play the next game and everybody's taking the game very seriously. The announcers announcing kids' names. You're playing under the lights for the first time. It was like the first time I felt, whoa, this is real baseball. And then got into the rivalries within that. So what do you remember from those times?
I remember our catcher, a guy named Adrian Antonini, who wound up playing at LSU, Westminster Christian guy. I remember how hard he threw. He threw the ball off his knees from behind the plate at like age 10 or 11, which was unheard of back then. And I remember just thinking, I wonder, this guy's got to throw like 90 miles an hour off the mound right now. But I remember just how good, how polished, how disciplined the teams were. I think everybody on that team wound up playing Division I baseball at one point or another, and it was just it was an honor and a privilege to be selected to play that summer in that environment. I remember the curveballs got real. You started playing kids from like Lake Worth and Palm Beach County and all over the place, and they were real breaking balls, and it really inspired me to work harder.
What kind of player were you during those times? Would you have been one of the top players on the team? What position were you playing?
That's a really good question. I think there was two teams. There was an A team and a B team. I started out on the B team at Avanti, Then I got called up to the A team and probably hit like 6th or 7th during that time on that team. There was guys that were much more advanced, much bigger, much stronger, faster, more skilled. So there was a lot of really good players on there. But I started off on the B team and wound up, earning my way to the A squad.
So where do you personally in that journey take that jump to where you realize, okay, I'm pretty good at this now? A lot of that coincides with high school usually, but not always. So like getting into that high school journey, how do you end up at Sunset High, correct?
Yes.
How does that happen? Is that a proximity thing?
Yeah, this proximity. I think I can go back and remember, as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a Major League Baseball player. I think I wanted to do two things. I wanted to be a cowboy because my dad watched cowboy movies like Clint Eastwood and those guys. I wanted to be a cowboy and a baseball player. That's my earliest memories. So I knew what I always wanted to do that. That was always the dream. As far as getting to Sunset High, I wound up at Coral Gables High in my junior year for about 9 weeks. There was recruiting is a strong word back then, but there was a little.
We're talking about Miami baseball.
Yeah, it was before you could go anywhere, so it's kind of I'm still like tongue in cheek about it. But I kind of got recruited. I did like a private off-site workout thing, and I went to Gables to they transferred over to Gables. I went there for about 9 weeks. Fall baseball starts, and I want to say they had 7 guys come over from Columbus that year, including Jose Prado, who wound up being a sandwich pick.
Yeah. That name's been mentioned here too as one of the better players in Miami-Dade history.
Yeah, like a top 25 player in the country, right? It's just
he was in that group.
He was in that group. So, when I wound up getting over there, I did this fall ball thing, and I couldn't really get the coach's attention. So I asked him, what exactly was going on. So he told me as a junior, he said I'd have to start on the JV team and work my way up. And so I was driving every morning, 5:30 a.m., driving all the way to Gables from West Kendall. And I thought to myself, what am I doing? It's I live 5 minutes from Sunset High, who didn't have a very good baseball program at the time. I said, well, I could either go and just jump on some team or make my local team as good as I can make it. And I viewed that as the more responsible thing to do, in addition to, having to work your way up as a junior. I wanted to play college baseball and eventually professional baseball. And I knew that path was going to be a little more complicated. So I chose to go back to Miami Sunset. Best decision I ever made.
Is that when you hit your stride as a player, as a high school player?
Yes. My junior year is when I really started hitting my stride as a player.
What clicked?
I think I was just an obsessive worker. Like all I remember doing was I had a cone that I borrowed from construction sites every time you get a chance. I think any local Miami baseball player back then will tell you we would grab cones from construction sites. I had 6 balls in the trunk of my car, and I would just hit into either Royal Green Elementary's fence. I probably owed them a fence, or Sunsets. You wind up. I kept moving from different spots in between the 2 poles, but there was an obsession, a drive where it was an insatiable appetite to just perfect my craft, the swing, that component, that piece of it. It was me against me. And I just found so much comfort, even all the way through the major leagues. I used to love getting into the cage by myself and just the sound of your breathing, making contact with the baseball with the wood bat, at the crack of a wood bat, and hitting it into either a net or a fence. It was just I found it therapeutic.
There's one of the better baseball books I've ever read was The Way of Baseball, and it was by Sean Green. And he talks about his meditative practice through his tee session. Like everything you just said, the quiet, the smack of the bat, the whole, he turned it into this like meditative process that I thought it was the first time the game had ever been explained to me in that way. But back to the obsessive nature, where does that come from? Where do you think that comes from? Instilled?
I'm not sure. I just remember, for as long as I could remember, it was all I wanted to do. All I wanted to do was throw the tennis ball against the wall. And no, don't get me wrong, we played football, we played basketball. But baseball season was by far my favorite. And I think just falling in love with the feeling of getting a tiny 1% better every day. then eventually it becomes like 0.0001% better. And just knowing that you did everything that you could that day to become the best that you can be. I think it was a combination of wanting to be the best version of myself. And so that was pulling me towards that. That was the drive pulling me. And I was also running away from the fear of not being good enough. So it was that constant, it was a push and pull. In hindsight, I didn't know that at the time.
Right. So you have, in my opinion, spent a lot of time in the scouting world, so I see a lot of swings. You have a kind of iconic swing, in my opinion. It's a swing that's your own style, right? Like when you swing, I say like, oh, and I've seen it later on. I was like, okay, that kid swings a little bit like Raúl Ibáñez. It's this very sweet, fluid, left-handed move with a very quick move to the baseball right at the end. And where you talked about being obsessed with perfecting that, where did you find that, first of all, that ability to lift the ball poolside? Like, where does that, for hitters, that's like a moment in time where when they figure that out, they can kind of take that next step. It sounds like that happened to you somewhere junior year. Yeah,
I couldn't. So I don't think I knew how, I didn't really know how to pull the ball deliberately. I think it just happened. When my brothers and we would play, I was 7 and 8 years older. Those guys were my mentors, my heroes. And we would play out in front of my house with the tape ball, take this little tape ball, and as they would spin breaking balls and make me cry sometimes as a competitive kid. And the focus was always like, if you hit a fly ball in this game, you were out. If you hit a ground ball in this game, you were out. The only way to do it was to hit a line drive. The only way you can get a hit. And there was no homers because the tape ball wouldn't reach the neighbor's house. It wasn't, it wouldn't go far enough. So it was this line drive game. And I just remember, I think this is by chance, there was a tree just to the right of me, which was like no further than like a second baseman at double play depth. And if you hit it on the other side of that, it was a foul ball. So I think it just helped me groove a swing that was to the big part of the field, mainly to left center field, which that approach and that mindset, you're only a click away from pulling the baseball. So I think they focused on short, compact swings because they were bringing it.
Right.
They were throwing, they could throw hard and they could spin the ball. So it was a short, compact swing. And later on, I think I learned how to deliberately pull the ball as more of an accidental puller.
So you go on to play at Sunset through your high school career. Senior year's coming to a close here. What's the conversation like for you in terms of like next steps? Like what happens? You're considering colleges, but also I'm sure you're getting some scout attention at this time as well.
Not a great student on by my own, so I put myself in a really tough situation. And I was playing at a high school where people didn't really know. I mean, we went 5-16. I think my junior year, I think Coach Bill McLean came my senior year, and he took over, and I stayed, at the school with Coach Bill McLean. Was a great mentor, and I think we went like 14-11. So nobody knew. Our coaches were working really hard on trying to get me an opportunity to play in college. I mean, I still remember like they were filling out scout cards for me and sending it to the Oakland A's and different teams. I think my junior year at Palmetto High School, we were playing at Sunnyland Park, and Benny Goodman, who was another, like a legendary scout in Miami, Florida, drafted Ron Caradad. I want to say he drafted both Caradad brothers, but Gus Gandarias as well. Maybe even Pedro Grifol. But he saw me pitching, and he gave me a card. That was my first scout card ever as a pitcher, and I thought, well, I guess I'm a pitcher. But a year later, we were playing at St. Brendan High School, and Eric Knowles was the shortstop there, who went in the 6th round with the Yankees. And just by chance, their pitcher, there was a scout in the stands named Ray Blanco with the Rangers who happened to be watching Eric Knowles, and the guy drops a curveball down and in, and I hit it into the tennis courts over at St. Brendan. And now that guy started following. He was there to watch Eric, but then he was following Eric and now me, and that's how I wound up getting drafted by the Rangers out of high school in the 54th round, which
we have 20 rounds now.
We have 20 now. So
that's was it a draft and follow situation? Right. They drafted you as a draft and follow. So basically, that's you get drafted and they get to watch you play in the summer and have like a year before they make a decision that they could sign with you.
That's right.
So the year comes and the journey stops in Miami-Dade before you end up going to, to play professional baseball? How does that happen?
Yeah, so I had no college offers other than the coach that was at Coral Gables who had me start on JV. By the way, we're totally friends and cool now. It's no problem. But told me to start at JV. He got a job with LSU recruiting, and he showed up to practice and asked if I was be interested in playing for LSU. That was the only 4-year school. And this is a great thing that I'm about to say about him. His name is Dan Canaveri. Great thing I could say about him is he said, hey, I was wrong. I made a mistake. You shouldn't have been starting on JV. I'd love for you to come to LSU. Now, again, I wasn't, my scholastic resume wasn't built for a 4-year school at the time. So I think what wound up happening is Miami-Dade downtown heard somehow about me. It may have been my coaches that reached out, and Steve Hertz had me come out there. And then it was Steve Hertz, Demi Maneri, then Coach Green had me come. And when I met Coach Green, I think all of those coaches were phenomenal, but when I shook Coach Green's hand, there was something nostalgic about him. He had this, who he passed away recently, but he was a huge mentor, but there was something really nostalgic about, this distinguished gentleman with his hat pristine. I think they used to call him Green's Marines. The way that he ran it, I just knew that I had to play for this man the moment I met him.
And this is back at a time when the Dade programs were split, right? There were 2 programs? Three programs.
3, and they were all good.
And they were all good. It was this baseball pipeline. So when you're talking about Miami in a certain era, you can't get around that whole Miami-Dade baseball system. My dad references it all the time. And so you get put into this system. And which campus did you play at?
South.
Miami-Dade South. So the Kendall campus at that point. And so what kind of player are you there?
I'm a raw player. I could swing it. I didn't see myself as being, I think my dad always knew. My dad would pour this confidence into me, but I always had this insecurity that I wasn't good enough. So I had this, again, the insatiable drive to succeed and get better. And I wound up going there for the fall, and they had quite the squad. They had a really good squad, and Coach Green saw something in me, and he had this thing back then where he was like, if you're part of my starting 9, you're playing. And I started off the season 4 for 20, and I was really worried that I was going to not play, that I was going to get benched. And he saw something in me, called me in the office, and he said, you seem like you're worried about something. I don't know what you're worried about. You're playing. And the moment he said that to me, I took off. So, it really, it unshackled me from myself at the time, where he poured that belief into me. Yeah. And ultimately I wound up, it gave me the confidence to believe that I was getting the opportunity to play.
That's what stood out, like an injection of confidence right at the right time when you needed it. I think in the arc of a player development story, those things they end up being so important for you to gain momentum and catch momentum. So at what point does this graduate into, okay, I feel good enough that you've been drafted once already,
yes,
but like that I feel like I can realize this dream of continuing to play baseball? Is it one scout that shows particular interest? Is it multiple? Because what brought you here today, and the connection to this, is what I believe to also be a legend of Dade, is Ralph Reyes, who's one of the original OG scouts in Miami. And he described you as an 80-grade human being. On the scouting scale, 20 to 80 is the highest elite level grade you can give, and he gave it to you as a human being, not just as a player.
Thank you.
So I imagine you're engaging with scouts a lot at this point. Which one clicks for you to then get drafted by the Mariners, correct?
Yes. Well, Ralph is a legend, and Ralph was always around at the time. I think he was part-time scout, but he was a construction developer.
Oh, yeah.
And he would build, and he was always around just kind of as a mentor. Even on the business side, he was just really sharp and savvy, and he was very close with Alex Fernandez, who had been to Miami-Dade, a couple of years before that. And so, again, having Ralph around to pick his brain back then was a big deal for us. And I do want to say one thing. It's really important as human beings and as players and anybody that can inspire the younger generation. I can't say, I can't overstate or say it enough that it's incredibly important to give back, to pour the dream, to not be a dream killer, to be a dream giver, and to walk up to the young people, even if there's an opportunity where, as a father of 5 kids, but if there's an opportunity where you're driving by a baseball field or a football field, it's really impactful and important when you walk up to some young kid, boy or girl, and tell them, hey, you look fantastic, keep the dream going. There's an opportunity for you, and walk away. You never know how much impact small words are going to make. And I don't think that's just for athletes. I think that's for everybody.
Yeah, it's a human principle.
And
I think that's, man, you are speaking our language here. We try to inspire that in here as much as we possibly can. We even have a coffee that we want to release called Dream Chaser Coffee. And these things are, they're so delicate and fragile at certain points that you have to give them, water them and grow them, and not, even if it's imperfect at the beginning, like that nudge of confidence and that kind of that blind belief that you can pull it off anyway. I think so that's a great segue into you rolling into a professional player. You'll make all-star games, you'll play in World Series, you'll play with some of the better players in the world, be part of some of the better teams, accrue over 20 WAR in your major league career. Giancarlo, you had the stats too, right? Over how many hits? And
over 2,000 hits, right? Over 300 home runs.
Yes.
I think above 800 OPS. Not too bad.
And those are counting stats to me. How long, service time number, actually? We're
17 years and 20 days.
17 years of major league service. That is just astonishing to me. And for that reason alone, you'd qualify as a legend of Dade, being from here and accruing. Just because being around enough major league focused or related people, one of the things that gets accredited or counted, like, yeah, that guy's got 10 years in the show. The guy's got 5 years in the big leagues. The guy's got this, and that's it's the immediate cue of that guy's been around. He's done some stuff, and to do 17 years, it's truly tremendous. And obviously the offensive accomplishments even more. So kudos and flowers to you on that.
Thank you.
But I am interested by that whole. You get drafted in '96 by the Mariners, right?
92 by the Mariners.
Sorry, 92 by the Mariners. You make your debut in '96.
That's right.
Okay. Who's your signing scout?
Fernando Arguelles. Legendary scout. This guy scouted only for a few years. He had Joel Pinheiro, Big Papi, myself, a guy named Tim Hurricola in the 34th round, drafted me in the 36th round. I mean, and he only did it for like a finite amount of years. And he was getting guys in the 30th round, Pinheiro in the 16th round. He was a phenomenal, Big Papi, of course. He credits, he talks about, he signed A-Rod, and we're like, Fernie, you didn't find A-Rod under a rock. That guy, that was the number 1 pick in the draft, but he does get credit for it.
Right. He's the listed signing scout, but the listed signing scout for you is him.
Fernando.
Okay,
phenomenal
so this is 1992, and where do you report to first?
Yeah, so the draft story I can share with you guys, as a draft and follow, the Rangers come sit at my kitchen table. I had a great season. And I had an agent at the time. He told me you should go back into the draft. The Rangers came to my house, offered me 5th round money at the time. Okay. Oddly enough, puts me on the phone with Omar Minaya, who has become a good friend of mine, former general manager of the Expos and the Mets as well. He was the farm director at the time. Told me they were going to send me right to high A ball right out of college. I turned down the offer. The Mariners call, and they say, hey, you're sliding pretty bad in the draft. It's Fernando. And he says, it's the 16th round right now. What did you turn down from the Rangers? And I said, the package was like $67,000 plus school. He's like, if we match that, will you take it? And I'm, yeah, absolutely, I will take it. And you ever sit next to a phone? We didn't have cell phones at the time. I still remember sitting next to the phone. There's a yellow phone in my room, and it never rang. And I sat next to that phone for almost 2 full days.
Wow.
And I finally got a call really late in the evening the next day, and it was the Mariners, and they drafted me in the 36th round, but they told me they couldn't honor that offer. Mm. So all they had for me was $15,000 in school. kind of going back to my college season, I'm having this really phenomenal college season, you know, leading the country in runs batted in, up there in home runs, and having a great season. And I get home right before a game, and my brother, who's been an ER nurse at Jackson Memorial Hospital for like 30 years, he was a paramedic at the time. He said to me, he looks pretty disheveled, and he says, "Hey, you got to get to the hospital. I just administered CPR on Pop, on our dad." And I said, "Well, I have a game," not recognizing what was going on. I have a game right now. Do you think I should go to the game or, you know, go to the hospital? He says, "Get to the hospital." By the time I got to the hospital, my dad had passed away. And so it's devastating. You know, at the time, my dad was like my mentor, the supporter, the backbone of our family. And he passed away. And so if we fast forward, the Mariners make me the offer for $15,000, and school, that offer sits for about a month. And the only reason I took it was two reasons. My uncle, who passed away, told me, "Hey, go make your money in the big leagues. That's where the real money is anyway." And I just got tired of hearing my mom cry. Every morning I'd wake up and I could hear my mom crying, sobbing. In the bathroom. It was a small home, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home. So the bathroom was right next to my room. So I said, I'm going to go, I'm going to go for my dream.
Wow. So that's the context or the backdrop of the beginning of your professional career. Wow.
Yes.
And now you're about to start this journey, which is like the minor league journey is not for the weak, the faint of heart, So that's a lot to how old? 20?
I think I was 19. I think I just turned 20 or I was 19. And if there was a gift, like I could always hit a little bit. If there was a gift, we talk about, dream killers, dream givers.
Yeah.
And I got to rookie ball and I looked around and there was 40 plus guys there. And I had these Oakleys on. And we had one of our coaches, it was like my first speech in rookie ball. He's like, "You guys need to bust your asses because look around you. One, maybe two of you is going to make it to the big leagues. And if there was a gift that I had, it was this." I looked around and I remember thinking, okay, me and who else? I think that was the gift. And so it's also the reason why I'm always cognizant and aware of not being the anti-motivational speaker that tells people what they can't do, pouring into them, because not everybody has that gift inside of them where they can just look around and say, "Oh, you don't think I can? I'll prove it to you that I can." But that was the gift. I remember looking around. And by the way, he was wrong because about six guys off that team made it to the major league. So
Right.
don't believe the haters or the naysayers.
Wow, that's such an important thing. And in scouting young kids, it does come down to this binary confidence or belief that you either have or you don't, or you develop a little later. Some guys have it more innate. Sounds like you have had some of that innately built in. And I'm sure with newfound purpose after what you had just experienced. So you go into the Seattle Mariners system that is loaded. If you look at the players in that would end up going to impact the major leagues of the Mariners. So what do you remember from your earliest Mariner times? You debut in 96, correct, with the Mariners?
Yeah, I debuted in 96. Cup of coffee, 96. Coming through the minor leagues, I had to earn playing time. I could always hit. They converted me. Actually, it was Fernando who suggested that I catch. I'd never caught before. He's like, "Look, you can throw. You're a left-handed hitter. If you can go and catch, you can play in the big leagues for a long time." So I learned the game from behind the plate. Ultimately, it was about 3 instructional leagues in where, as a catcher, they kept telling me, your bat is 2 years ahead of your defense. Well, eventually I was in high A ball, and I'm like, hey, I'm really getting this catching thing down, and I had this really great season. Had a minor league player of the year that year for the Mariners, and I thought I was just getting the hang of this catching thing, and they said I went to instructional league to go to play in the I went to instructional league. They skipped me from A ball to Triple A the next year. So I was not supposed to play in Double A. I did wind up playing there for 3 weeks because somebody came down from the big leagues. But then I had to learn a whole new position. And I thought I was getting the hang of catching, and it turns out that I think I led the league in pass balls that year, so I wasn't that great of a catcher.
Well, I think they threw out very casually there, like, can you catch in the middle of a professional career? I think it's one of the more difficult. It's arguably the most difficult position defensively to play, demanding, and there's a whole other like chess component that you have to, like, three-dimensional chess and way you have to see the game. So I think that's a big task just to play the catching position at even an average level, all while still needing to produce offensively as a prospect. You don't get that time for your bat to lag. I'm
sorry to interrupt. You know, one thing that really helped me with the catching part, it helped me become a more complete player because I had to learn the game from behind the plate. You had to be, focus on your pitcher more than yourself. The work and the grind and the griminess of the position was very, very rewarding, despite the fact that you could take an 0 for 5, but you called a great game, and there was deep satisfaction that only maybe you knew and your pitcher knew or your coaches knew. So I love just the grind of catching, the blocking balls, and you always put in a full day's work.
Yep.
And I'm also super thankful that I learned the game from behind the plate because it helped me, defensively, prepping. It helped me pitcher sequencing, picking up tendencies, and really you become a practical psychologist as a catcher. And the other thing I loved about catching too is I never worried about my hitting. I didn't have time to think about it. Where like when you're playing the outfield, there's a lot of time in between pitches.
All you do is think about the bad swing previously.
You're like, don't take a swing right now in the outfield because everybody's watching, but you got to focus on the next play. Well, behind the plate, you don't have that luxury.
Right,
you have
right back into it.
And you have to focus on your team, and you have to focus on the wins and the pitcher, and it's always about it's a service job. I loved it. I'm thankful I got to learn it. Yeah. But the truth was I wasn't that great at it.
Yeah, but it would clearly serve you well later in your career on other sides of the game, understanding pitchers, the sequencing stuff, and all of that. Okay, so what's the first moment in the big leagues where you felt like, oh, I can stay here, I'm good enough to play here?
It's a really good question. So I think it's like there's a lot of insecurity, but there's like a deeper level of confidence. And I think there were times when I'm not watching Ken Griffey Jr. and Alex Rodriguez as a young player, because that was like a totally different level. And Edgar was an elite hitter, but he was a shining example of like, he wasn't an incredible athlete. He was a designated hitter, but he worked tirelessly at his craft. And I remember thinking, I think I'm going to try to emulate him. And I had like Jamie Moyer as well. Jamie Moyer is throwing 84, 86 miles per hour back then. That's in his prime. At the end, he was throwing like 82. Right. But and he was getting people out. And so I wanted to emulate these guys. Dan Wilson, who was, a really good player, really good catcher. But I looked at those guys and I thought, okay, I think I can be like those guys. I know I can't be Griffey. Right. I know I can't do what Junior does and what A-Rod's doing. But I think I can be somewhere like these guys. And I think the confidence part of it, where you start, you face like, again, my first hit was against Doug Drabeck. Once you do that once or twice, you think to yourself, okay, if I work really hard, I think I could stay here for a long time.
Ken Griffey Jr. is generational, iconic. We can insert whatever word here, especially here in this space. I think Junior, the producer over there, comes in with a Ken Griffey Jr. shirt every 3 days, a different one, and it's never the same. I don't know how he has so many. My favorite player, the swing every kid tries to emulate in stickball. What was it like having an up-close seat to Ken Griffey Jr.?
Oh, man. People talk about how you became a fan of Michael Jordan on the court.
Yeah.
So I just got goosebumps. Griffey makes this catch. I'm playing first base, and we're playing in Detroit, and Luis Gonzalez hits a ball. It's an iconic catch. They play it. And Luis Gonzalez hits a ball to right center field. There's a guy on first base. Griffey goes full throttle, jumps over the wall. What to me on the field looked like he went waist high over the wall. It's probably more like chest high. Still, remarkable catch in Old Tiger Stadium. Brings this ball back. And in my mind, I'm in the center of the diamond with my hands on my head like this. Thankfully, I wasn't doing it. But in my mind, I'm like, That's the greatest catch I've ever seen. He winds up and he throws the ball, and he's throwing the ball back to first base. I'm playing first, but I forgot I was playing first. So as he throws it, I go, oh shit, that's me. So I had to run back, sprint back to first base, and there wasn't a double play, but that never happened to me with any other player but Ken Griffey Jr. It was unbelievable how good he was. If the lights were shining bright, he was going to shine brighter. It's the greatest player. I had the privilege of being around some legendary Hall of Fame players.
Even on that team.
And on that team, there was nobody who did it easier and nobody who did it better than Ken Griffey Jr.
That's
Talk about the locker room dynamic, because you mentioned some guys. I think Randy Johnson is in the mix also, that team. Talk about the locker room dynamic with all those guys being in there and during those times.
It's unbelievable. So Jay Buhner, great leader. Randy Johnson, tremendous pitcher. This is the best pitcher on the planet at the time. And all of these guys were, it was back in those times where older players didn't really talk to younger players, but I was quiet. I did my work, stayed out of everybody's way, didn't do anything flashy or tried not to do anything stupid. I think I was blessed because I grew up as the youngest of 3 brothers, and if I got out of line, one of them smacked me in the head. So, and that was actually a blessing. So I knew kind of where my place was at the time. The locker room was unbelievable. Everybody was focused on winning. You had Buhner, Randy, Segui had come through there. Sereno came through there before, but Dan Wilson. You had the core guys, Griffey, A-Rod, a revolving left field door, but guys like Norm Charlton. It was like a really cool dynamic of players that were just hyper-focused on winning, and Lou Piniella was the manager. Everything with Lou was about winning. And I learned a lot from being around those guys, where everything was focused on the team, everything was focused on winning baseball games, and everybody was focused on getting into the playoffs. And back then, they would say, hey, don't mess with my money, because you had to get to the postseason to get the postseason bonus. And so it was very much a unified club, fiery club, that was hyper-focused on winning baseball games. So it was a huge, huge blessing to grow up in that environment.
I want to point on the unit on Randy Johnson for a second, because you do one quick opening of his baseball reference page, and it still doesn't make sense. That splashed onto the scene in the big leagues, and he's put up numbers that we haven't even come close to seeing since. Like that kind of just dominance from the left side with I feel like sliders. He's the guy who introduced the slider in a big way to professional baseball, to Major League Baseball. What was that like, watching that kind of baseball has never seen this before, or at least not our generation, and he shows up and just breaks every, like we talk about innings limits now and things like that. You look at his numbers and it's like 300 innings pitched, 350 innings pitched, 400 strikeouts. I don't know. Every time I come across Randy Johnson, I was like, people don't remember how good this was.
He was so dominant. He struck fear into the heart of the opponents. Being on his side, on the days he pitched, he actually struck some fear into his own teammates on the days he pitched, because he was dead serious on the days he pitched. Everybody knew you don't talk to the unit on the day he pitched. So incredibly intense, fierce competitor, great stuff. But as he went, I think he got traded right around his 5th or 6th year. The Mariners traded him.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, I knew I was watching something special, not just as a player, but as a fan, as somebody who loves the game of baseball. I remember at the time thinking, this is a even better version of the great Steve Carlton. That's what I remember thinking to myself.
So before we get off Seattle, you would end up having 3 stops at Seattle, right? If I remember correctly, 3 major league stops in Seattle. What was that like as a baseball experience? What is that like? I feel like Seattle as a baseball town, it's so far in that northwest corner, but it has a pretty rich history, even if it's more recent history. Those 90s, everybody played Ken Griffey Jr. Baseball on Super Nintendo, and that lineup that you described, that was everybody's favorite lineup. But what was Seattle like at that time, playing in Seattle?
Playing in Seattle was unbelievable. I mean, the excitement, there was a buzz. That team was, again, I got called up 96, 97, 98. That team was coming off that 95 team where they made it to the postseason after being down like 11 games or something like that in September. So there was a huge buzz around the city, and there was a expectations to win, with Lou at the helm. So being a part of that was incredible. I had Griffey's poster on my wall. In high school, I had all left-handed hitters on my wall, so I had these posters. I had like Griffey, David Justice, George Brett, Tony Gwynn, Wade Boggs. All of these guys were on my wall. These are heroes of mine. So it was kind of surreal. I played with Ken's brother, with Junior's brother coming through the minor leagues, Craig Griffey, great dude. So, and Ken Griffey Sr. would come around. He was kind of a special assistant for the Mariners at the time. So he would take us to dinner, from time to time, take all the Latino guys out to dinner. And, just there was a buzz around the team and an expectation to win. And I remember the shift happening on the minor league side in instructional league and throughout the organization, where we were watching these guys win. In 95, we were in instructional league at a place called JT Zook's, eating 10-cent chicken wings, and the whole instructional league team is there, and we won. We're all cheering and screaming in Arizona, and we got back to the field the next day, and Jim Scalen, who was our minor league coordinator at the time, I remember him grabbing us all and saying, "Hey, there's an expectation for us to all win now. That means all of you." I remember just instilling the expectation of we're supposed to win at the minor leagues too. It was a big deal as well.
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned taking the Latino teammates out for dinner, because I think anybody who crosses into professional baseball realizes that there's these two worlds. There's this domestic side of professional baseball, all the draft, high school, all those types of guys. But then there's a Latin American group of players that is also in the mix here in the player pool. And I feel like you probably got put in the middle of these situations all the time, because you grew up speaking Spanish as well, I would imagine.
First language, yeah.
Same for a lot of us here, actually. First language Spanish, then would be a bilingual kid. And I'm sure that would serve you later in clubhouses all the time, because you'd end up, I call them these, like the bridge guys. They get glue guys, bridge guys, but the guys that bridge these two communities together. You're probably the translator in a lot of mound meetings, things like that. But how much did the bilingual component come up and help you through your major league career?
It was incredibly important and helpful to be able to serve your teammates. When guys come over here, people don't realize they didn't speak any English at all. They didn't know how to order food at Subway. So you become the designated pizza guy, the guy that's ordering food, picking up the phone and ordering food. You help them with writing checks and all of these things, going to the bank and talking to the people at the bank. So you become the bridge, but you're almost a liaison for them. And what I learned over time was I would say, "Hey, I'm going to write this first check for you, but then we're going to talk about banking and what it actually means, and so that you could learn to write the checks for yourself. Or I'm going to order with you and I'll help you. This is what you're going to say," and kind of sit there, and you almost become a teacher and a mentor to your peers and your teammates. And out of necessity, because it's not fair to those guys. And today it's gotten way better. Every team has a translator. Guys are taught English. There's an academy and a school. We didn't have that back then. So your teammates that were of Latin American descent that could translate, you became the liaison, almost like the business manager. You became everything for these guys. And I lived with my first couple of years. I lived with guys that were from Venezuela and from the DR and Cuba even, and so you wound up having to bridge the gap. Also helping communicate to guys that come from maybe Biloxi, Mississippi, or somewhere in North Carolina or Tennessee, who weren't really aware of the culture. You could help bring the team together that way, and I viewed it as an important role.
It's absolutely an important role, and I think the right organizations value it properly. They understand that it's a necessary component of a successful culture, team, organization. So, but you got to actually be the one in that seat doing it. And I'm sure a lot of Latin American players remember you from those times that you helped. And I'm sure you have a long list of names like that. So pivoting out from Seattle, the Seattle journey kind of comes to a close. And then you hop into the Royals organization, if I'm reading the timeline correctly or remembering it correctly, right?
That's right. I got non-tendered in Seattle.
Okay.
So I went from no prospect in Seattle to top prospect in Seattle to backup player. I think it was my third year of after your third year, you become arbitration eligible. And if you're not producing or you're not playing, so I was a defensive replacement in the year 2000, we made it to the playoffs, defensive replacement, bat off the bench, pinch hitter, and, for whatever reason, there wasn't a lot of belief that I could hit at the big leagues at the time. So I get non-tendered while I'm in winter ball, had just gotten married. So I got non-tendered while in winter ball, had just gotten married. And oddly enough, the Phillies were the first team to call because Larry Boa was our third base coach. He got the managing job, and that didn't quite work out for whatever reason. But when the Royals called, it was Allard Baird, another guy out of Miami
Mentor
legend, mentor of mine too.
Most interesting man in the world.
He's incredible.
Allard Baird.
So he's incredible.
Finds a way to live in Florence, Italy, and Miami, Florida, and splits time. I've never heard of that before, but
that's right.
Please continue.
He's unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
He's unbelievable. So Allard calls me. I almost go to Tampa. I talked to their GM at one point. Allard calls me, and he picks up the phone. And again, going back, the kind of the reoccurring theme is belief. Allard calls me and he says, "Hey, I believe you're a 300 hitter, and you haven't been given an opportunity to play. If you get back to spraying the ball on the field instead of pulling the ball, trying to pull the ball. You're gonna play here. There's an opportunity for you here." And I hung up the phone and said, "Sign me up." So that was the opportunity that I got. And true to his word, as you know, Allard was the first general manager I ever heard say this, and maybe the last I ever heard say, "My door is always open, but I warn you, don't walk in if you don't want to hear the truth." And if you walked in that office, you better be ready for the truth because he was going to give it to you. And I have the utmost respect for Allard Baird for that and for many other reasons, but mentor.
As do I. I get goosebumps thinking about it because he was so influential in my young journey as a baseball executive. I get to the Red Sox in 2013 as a spring training intern for the Boston Red Sox, and he's in I think he was the VP of player personnel, but he was running international professional operations. So scouting Japan, scouting Korea, scouting the Cubans. And so my Spanish-speaking ability, I started working with Allard quite a bit. And to this day, I remember him being one of the more gracious, forward passing of knowledge, cognizant, and valued the importance of that, took the time. In an era where everybody was on their phone, I'll never forget he sat with me, who I was an intern, and he's at this high level in the organization, and he put his phone down and just didn't look at it one time throughout the whole conversation. And at that time, it was okay. He was just locked in and engaged, and I would learn so much about the game of baseball from Allard Baird. Something I say all the time, he would talk about the importance of, because he had that GM experience, he would be able to talk about baseball in this four-dimensional way, talking to ownership, talking to your manager, talking how your GM should speak to the player, these different things that guy, I hope I get him in this chair one day because I think he qualifies as a legend of Miami-Dade. So I'm glad that we get a chance to talk about him. So
I agree with you.
He's the GM when you're in Kansas City.
He's the GM in Kansas City. He
Yep.
started out as an area scout down here in Miami. I think
Yep.
he coached at Broward Community College.
Yeah.
Full circle story. So I'm in spring training with Allard Baird, and I said, "Hey, my first tryout." They used to have these in the Miami Herald. They would say, the Kansas City Royals are having a tryout at Hialeah, Miami Lakes. So I'm a junior in high school. I'm like, I'm going to go to the tryout, just see where I stand, see how you match up. So you go over there, and there's a scout, and I'm telling Allard this story. The guy's wearing one of the baggies, Kansas City Royals gear. He says, "Some of you are not going to make it. Most of you are not going to make it here. And some of you might." And he said, "But a lot of you are going to have to go home and give it a good hard cry and move on with your life." And I'm telling Allard the story because that story shook me to the core. It was the first time where you realize your mortality as a player, but after my junior year of high school. So that really lit a fire under me to work my tail off. You get one shot at this thing. And I said, "Do you know who that guy was?" And Allard says, "That was me." So there was Allard Baird, full circle, as a junior in high school, who gave that speech, and that was him. He said, "That was the speech I used to give."
And here he is kind of, because free agency is tough. Non-tendering puts you in this limbo. So here he is plucking you out of this like limbo status to then give you the platform to then you'd go on to have establish yourself as a kind of above average major league player to at that point in time, and you'd go on to be beyond that and overall beyond that. But there's that injection of confidence and opportunity to like get a platform. And those Royals teams were a lot of interesting prospects through that whole era. And baseball in Kansas City would have probably been a whole other experience, right? It's a great baseball town as well.
Great baseball town. The teams were not good on paper, but man, could those teams hit.
Yeah.
Just couldn't really pitch. We didn't have the resources at the time. But we had, I mean, it was Carlos Beltran.
Young Carlos Beltran was
Jermaine
electric.
Dye, Mark Quinn. Johnny Damon had gotten traded, and that's how I wound up getting an opportunity. But Mike Sweeney was just a phenomenal career. But, you know, back then he was putting together 30 seasons with 35 and 100 plus. Yeah. Joe Randa at third base. Brett Main was behind the plate. Offensively, Carlos Febles at second base. We wound up Ray Sanchez, who was an unbelievable, maybe him and Jimmy Rollins are the two best, most solid defensive players. Jimmy just had a lot more range, but Ray Sanchez was super underrated as a defender at short. But we could really, really hit, and it was great approaches all the way through. Everything was about line drives, big part of the field, being able to shoot the ball to the off-center gap, and all of that trickled down from Allard Barrett. In fact, when Allard said, you know, I warn you, don't come into my office. You don't want to hear the truth. I wanted to hear the truth. So about halfway through spring training, I walk into the office, and he says to me, if you want to make this team and you want to play here, he said, here's your spray chart. He had it on the table. Here's your spray chart from your 1999 season with the Mariners, and here's your spray chart in 2000. And the 99 was sprayed all over the field, and 2000 was pulled. He said, if you do this, you're not making this team. If you do this, you're making this team. And I walked out and said, got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Gave me something to work on.
Clear direction.
Clear direction.
And you would come back in the off seasons to Miami always?
Always.
So this was always your home base, even when you move away elsewhere. So did you have somebody you hit with in the off seasons?
Yeah, I mean, we hit. Freddie would throw to us.
Wow.
So it was Freddie, Nachi would throw to us. As a group, we'd hit a lot at FIU. So my strength coach became Lou Deneen, the legendary FIU strength coach. He's the one that got me into strength training and really pushed us way past the edge. You know, some guys push you towards the edge. Lou threw you right off the cliff, and you had to sink or swim in the gym, training-wise. Hardest workouts I've ever done. And during the offseason, I'd hit. It was, you know, Jose Cruz Jr., who came down here, Alex Gonzalez from Killian High School, Mikey Lowell, had played at FIU. So we had a nice group. Ruben Sierra would hit there. Wow. Albert Pujols would come down because he was very close with Placido Polanco, who lived here. So it was an incredible group of players that we had at FIU. Levon Hernandez would show up. Danny Baez would throw his bullpens there. So there was like this great camaraderie and workouts that we had. And we had this great... Our batting practice guys were so good. Rafael Landestoy, Nachi Castro, Freddie Gonzalez, Pedro Grifol, Mike Tozar would come out and throw. These guys threw such great batting practice that when you got to the season, you were like, that's the best batting practice I've ever had. Nobody could throw like those guys.
Yeah, you just named the who's who of like people scattered throughout baseball, including Freddie Gonzalez. That's he's a legend in all these books here. And, you know, Giancarlo, as soon as we started preparing, he had that nugget of like, did you know that Freddie Gonzalez? What was the nugget from your point of view?
I think you mentioned earlier, it's where he worked with you back in the Sunset High School days, right? Yeah,
so in middle school, in McMillan Junior High, Freddie would come back. He played for the Yankees at the time, and he was a AAA catcher with the Yankees, and he'd come back and he would work security with Greg Teckerman, who's got a hitting facility right here in West Kendall as well. And Greg actually walked in my wedding. Was one of my high school coaches, but Freddie would come back around and he would always pour knowledge and belief. And for me, it was such a big deal as a 7th, 8th grader to be able to touch something or someone that was a part of this dream. This guy actually played for the Yankees. He wasn't in the big leagues, but he was playing professional baseball. Right. And he was always so gracious with his time. Eventually, he got into the coaching side, managing. He was managing the Miami Miracle back then, which was an independent league team. And then I think he went into the Yankees farm system as a minor league manager, but he never forgot where he came from. And his brother, Enrique Nini, was also a security monitor at Miami Sunset. So these guys were all like mentors to us, and Freddie would always come back and simplify the game. Sometimes, I think the true, what somebody who's a master teacher can do is he can take something complex and make it simple. And Freddie could masterfully do that. And we're still friends to this day, and he just had a phenomenal career.
I've had multiple overlaps with Freddie Gonzalez on the Marlins side of things, and just like he's like one of those Kevin Bacon figures. Everybody has like 1 or 2, 3 degrees of separation from Freddie Gonzalez. I remember him clearly from those Braves years, those good Braves teams that he was the manager of, and getting in that Bobby Cox system. And I want Freddie to be sitting in this chair one of these days too, because I think his story is incredible. But that's cool that's who you would end up working with in the offseason. I don't think you can find a bad word about Freddie in the game, and that's one of those hard things to do. And I think there's a bunch of good staffs that still bring him on, and it's really cool that the connection is coming back in the offseason. Because what I've seen here, being here for the off seasons, down the block from Pinecrest Physical Therapy, where I know you know Ron as well, the things that gather here in the off season in terms of major league talent to do their off-season workouts is what makes me feel like you can't say that Miami isn't one of the hottest hotbeds of baseball talent, period. Like from all ends of the scale and spectrum, we have a legitimate roster that you can put up against anybody in terms of quality of baseball, all of that. So, and that all comes together in the off seasons, right? And so that's cool. So where does the next transition in your career happen?
So I go with I'm with the Royals. I haven't thought about this in a while, but I'm with the Royals. I make the team out of spring training. My wife's pregnant. I got to make the team. God, you have to. There's no way out. You got to make this team. So my wife's pregnant. I make the team. I'm not really playing much. Very similar role, just kind of a backup role. Spot starts. Really tough way to make a living. Earn a living is you come in and you pinch hit, and you're always pinch hitting off the closer. Yeah. Back then it was like Mariano Rivera would come in the game for my time in Seattle, and KC, when I'm a backup player at the time, if we were playing the Yankees, I'm like, well, I'm getting at least 2 at-bats off of Mariano Rivera, which was not fun. And especially if you haven't played for a long time. So I'm, really in the same role. I get designated for assignment in May, and all 30 teams pass. So 29 other teams pass. I come back to Miami for the 3 days that you take off. I go hit at Sunset High School. Then I go to AAA. I think I went to play with, our team was Omaha. Played there for about a week. I get called back up, and Pedro's on the mound that night. And I take an offer. I don't remember exactly what happened. It wasn't great, but I'm in the big leagues for about another week. And I get designated for assignment again. And this is just like kind of, good Lord watching over me. I'm in the car on the way to the ballpark that day with A.J. Hinch and Blake Stein. And I'm going to the ballpark, and they talk about this Kevin Seitzer guy who's now the hitting coach for the Mariners, was with the Braves for a long time in the Royals. But Kevin Seitzer had a private hitting facility. And A.J. said he had gone and worked with Seitzer. I said, hey, I heard that Seitzer is phenomenal. We had the same agent back then, Speakers of Sport, Bob Gilhooly, Fernando Cuza, and those guys. And I said, do you have his number? He's like, yeah, I'll give it to you at the ballpark. So when I get to the ballpark, I walk in the door, and Tony Muser, a manager, calls me into the office, and I got designated for assignment again. So I'm getting sent down. I walk over to A.J. Hinch's locker room. I'm like, hey, you have that Seitzer guy's number? And he's like, yeah, I'll get it to you later. I go, no, I kind of need it now. I just got DFA'd again. So he gives me Seitzer's number. I spent 3 days with Kevin Seitzer and resurrected my swing and resurrected my career those 3 days.
Wow. Why? What stands out about what needed to be resurrected? Is it a move to the ball? Is it an approach thing?
Yeah, it was several things. It was an approach thing. It was hands, taught me how to lag the barrel, how to use my back elbow, how to soften my move to the baseball, how to go from slow to fast. At the time, I was trying to rotate and swing really hard. And when you start adding variability, it becomes really difficult to adapt. And he taught me how to lag the barrel, how to have an approach that was more singles, doubles driven, which eventually it unlocked my power.
Right. Right. Okay. So how do you leverage what you learned there? Who gives you the opportunity to showcase the adjustments you just made?
So I go to AAA, I say this prayer. I'm like, I go to AAA. I read this great book called The Prayer of Jabez at the time. And I go to AAA. I got one at-bat off of a lefty. What Kevin tells me is like, you have to stay stubborn with this because they're going to tell you to get the head out. They're going to tell you to yank the ball. They're going to tell you, pitch, look for the pitch on the inner third of the plate. People are going to say this to you. You have to stay out over the plate and shoot everything to left center field in your practice, in your work, and not chase power, not chase the long ball in batting practice. And I get one at-bat. The guy throws it, left-handed pitcher throws a slider. I stay on the slider, lag the bat, and shoot a line drive to left field. I make an out. It's the happiest out of my life. And
the light bulb went off.
The light bulb went off. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't been able to do that in as long as I can remember. For years, I hadn't been able to do that. So I come back to the dugout. They pull me out of the game. I get called up to the big leagues. And Carlos Febres, I get called up, and we're in Milwaukee. I'll never forget this. No sleep, zero sleep. And I get to the ballpark, and Carlos Febres said, hey, I heard them talking that they were going to call you up. Great to see you again. I go, oh, man, thanks. And he goes, yeah, they said they didn't have anybody else, so they might as well call you up. So I go, thanks, Carlos, I don't know. And he laughs, and, we chuckled about it. And I went out and played that game. I think Jamie Wright was on the mound, and I had the approach, and I hit 3 balls hard with the same easy approach. And all of a sudden, it took off. I think Mike Sweeney wound up getting hurt. I could play a little first. I had positional versatility. I could play all 3 outfield positions and play first. He went down. Then there was an opportunity in left field. Then something happened in right field. And then I think we traded Jermaine Dye. And so, the outfield became, I think it was Mark Quinn, Carlos Beltran, and myself, and Michael Tucker was also sprinkled in. That's the opportunity came from.
So that's where you establish yourself, you'd say. Like for the longer haul on the back end of your career, I feel like that's where the value is built up. Because I would remember you. I went to the University of Pennsylvania, which is in Philadelphia, and I remember you very clearly from those Philadelphia years, because when the Phillies are good, the most relevant thing in town in that city are the Phillies. And when it doesn't go good, they're on you for different reasons. But you, if you could sit in a chair like this in Philadelphia and be a legend of Philadelphia, I think, because of how they remember you there.
Thank you.
Those were some really good Philadelphia teams that you were a part of. And a really good era of Phillies baseball. And I know that that's frowned upon to talk about it in a Marlins location, how good the Phillies were. But that was my window into. I get there in 2007, and they're winning the World Series my freshman year, and they would be good those years. So many good players there. What was the Phillies experience like?
It was incredible. And one of the things I loved about playing for the Phillies, obviously the fan base was incredible. I loved the fans. The team was remarkable, not just as players, but as people. Like, you can look at the rooming list, pick up the phone, and call anybody on the list and go to dinner with them and want to go to dinner with them. Team really got along incredibly well. It was a gritty team. Charlie Manuel was the perfect manager for that team. He was gritty and really smart and spoke simply, acted like he didn't see everything, but he saw everything. So we would tell young guys when they got called to the big leagues, we'd pull them aside and say, hey, just so you know, Charlie saw what you did.
Right.
He's acting like he didn't see it, but he saw it, and he's gonna hit you between the eyes at some point if you let it happen again.
Right.
So just a incredible team, but the fan base, the stadium, the ballpark, the energy. You did something, you hit a homer or a big hit, and when you're running back to your position, I still get goosebumps about it. They're giving you a standing ovation as you're going back to your position. I'd never experienced anything like that before. And it was during that time. So it was just incredible. And one of the bonuses, perks for me, was as a native Miamian, I got to come to Miami, a few times a year and sleep in my own bed. So it was just love playing in the NL East. Loved it.
I try to describe it to people like that Philadelphia experience is electric in ways that, like, I've experienced baseball across all sorts of different Fenway, Yankee Stadium, but there's something about that. The Citizens Bank and when that place gets electric. I remember the Marlins were there in 2023, and Bryson Stott hits this grand slam while the crowd is still chanting his walk-up song. It's like first pitch grand slam, and the crowd keeps singing the song that they were singing. It gives me goosebumps. But that place can get as loud and intense and electric as any baseball environment I've ever seen. And so when you're good there, you're part of like, you're so many kids' favorite player in that region of the country because Phillies Nation is real, and that's cool that you got to be a part of that. So in that part of your career, you've now hit that, okay, I put the ball in the seats now. Like that's that you hit that window in your career where the power was a significant part of your game. Do any pitchers stand out that are good, good pitchers that you remember seeing well, that you, for whatever reason, you saw them well and they dominated elsewhere, but you got them good?
I mean, there's a few. Freddie Garcia, who was a teammate, great friend of mine. I don't know why. Right. It's just like every time I swung, the ball seemed to find a spot, so there was a bunch of hits. Right. He actually, when we're still friends to this day, good friends to this day, when I was on the other side of it and he was still with Seattle, he actually threw a ball over my head and hit the net during a spring training game just to let me know while he's drawing at me. Didn't try to hit me, but just let me know, like, enough's enough.
Right.
I think that, Weaver, when he threw hard, I saw him well. I didn't see him for a few years. I went to the NL. When I came back and he was throwing much softer, then I couldn't touch him. He became a way tougher pitcher for me. Some guys, Johan Santana, I happened to see him well. He's an elite Cy Young Award winner, one of the best of all time, but just for whatever reason, I kind of saw him well.
Even that changeup you saw well?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing. If we can quantify that in baseball, I mean, there's a way to train it. Right. I just don't know. I think something about
your bat path met his pitch path. Yeah.
And on the arm stroke thing, and maybe the timing of their delivery and the timing of your swing and path and trajectory that all match up properly. Nice. It's just kind of one of those weird things. Still, with the utmost respect, it never felt easy. Right. It just felt like there was a higher level of success.
Right. No, I asked the question because it comes up a lot, and the answers are all over the map in terms of like weird guys that you have weird success against. So, you're part of these great teams in Philadelphia. What I want to get to the Yankees component of the journey as well, but a lot happens between these two stations. How do you end up with the Yankees now?
So, but in between Philadelphia, I went from KC as a free agent back to Seattle. So I signed a 3-year deal with the Mariners, came back there, and then I signed a 2-year extension with the Mariners, went into free agency, came to Philly on a 3-year deal. Then after my 3rd year in Philly, I'm like 39 at the time, turning 40, and the Yankees called. So, I was really excited about the opportunity. At that point, that offseason, my kids were in school in Philly at the time. I was training with Brian Hennessy up there, which is a phenomenal trainer, inventor of the Squat Max MD belt squat, just brilliant machine. I have nothing to do with it. I'm just, it's not a sponsorship thing or anything, but, and the Yankees called, and I signed with the Yankees.
That's and would go on to hit one of the more iconic home runs in recent Yankee history. Can you walk us through that moment? So that was what year? It's
2012.
2012.
Yes.
I just remember this moment in the postseason, this big home run, and maybe even before we get to that, because you're describing doing things in a major league career in your late 30s, going into your early 40s. That's not the regular occurrence. So maybe we could start there. Like, how did you find a lot of players hit their decline at least from my perspective, in that 34 to 35 window, and it just kind of fizzles from there. You were able to find this longevity to the back end of your career, and a functional one. It's hard to stay on a 26-man, 25-man roster in those years. And you said positional versatility, I'm sure, helped you. But what do you attribute that to? Kind of this spike later in your career?
I think it was, again, the insatiable drive to always try to find the answers. Training during the offseason. I mean, I sought out some of the best guys in the world. Lou Dineen, who was right here in Miami, Florida. Pete Bomarito, who's in Fort Lauderdale area. Later on, Brian Hennessy. I hired a nutritional doctor named Dr. Robert Pastore. Spent time with some of the best soft tissue people in the world. Dr. Keith Pine. Ben Velasquez as part of my corrective exercise stuff. Then, during the offseason, I got to work with guys like Ron Yakub and
Yeah.
Gabriel Carvajal, both elite physical therapists right here in Miami, Florida. So I think it was that combination of that, but, coming full circle, going back to Edgar Martinez, Jamie Moyer, these guys were elite in their early to mid 30s. So again, having the model in front of you, being able to touch and, having the opportunity to walk over to Edgar Martinez and say, hey, Edgar, what do you do? I'd be walking to the food room after games that I'm not even playing with, and here's the best hitter in the world, walking to the weight room. So I'd be walking towards the food room as a young player. He's walking towards the weight room. I would literally turn around, go get my shorts on, and go to the gym and watch him like some type of creepy younger brother, see what he was doing. And I'm like, all right, well, he's doing that. I better do that too. So I'd walk over to our strength coach, Alan Wordle, at the time, and I'd say, hey, Alan, what's Edgar doing? I want to do what he's doing. The combination of that, and one thing that I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, is Jamie Moyer would tell me his story. I mean, I'm sitting on the bench. I'm like 27 at the time, not getting to play. That's kind of older for a guy that's trying to break in, 28. And I'd say, Jamie, could you tell me the story of your career again? Because Jamie had a very similar path. He had been non-tendered. He had been DFA'd. His father-in-law at the time, who was Digger Phelps, told him, hey, it's time to get a real job, maybe, because at 30, nobody, wants you. And so Jamie, after he achieves all these accolades, all-star games, and puts together a Hall of Fame resume, he would poke his father-in-law and say, how's that real job coming? You think I should do that get that real job? But having those guys there, it made it real that I was like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it too. What are they doing? Jamie would read at his locker every day, The Mental Game of Baseball by Harvey Dorfman.
Yeah, we have it here somewhere.
So, Jamie, I walk by him and I go, I read that book. I have that book. He goes, you have this book and you read this book? I go, yeah. He goes, yeah, Harvey's fantastic. And I said, you know Harvey Dorfman? And he said, yeah, Harvey was the one that turned my career around when I got sent down to AAA. I said, can I talk to him, please? I mean, at the time, I'm like going nowhere in my career. It's late in the season, really struggling, mentally, just under, like, where's your career headed? You got 100 at-bats. It's like August. So Harvey he was working for the Boris Corporation at the time, but would only take clients on based off of referrals.
Yeah.
Had a non-exclusive with Boris that way. So I start talking to Harvey Dorfman on the phone. That's the off-season when I get non-tendered, right before I get married.
Wow.
And again, it's another 3 days. I spent 3 days, I call it 3 days on Harvey's couch, and emerged with this incredible skill set and mindset, mentality, being able to understand, focusing on controllables, not trying. I have a tendency to people please. And he's like, that's never going to go away. It's part of who you are. But you could always be aware of it and replace the thought and change the behavior. He would say things like, I don't care, how you feel. I care about how you behave. I care about how you act. And that was a huge piece. If I don't spend time with Harvey Dorfman and shortly thereafter Kevin Seitzer, I'm not sitting in this chair right now.
Right, you're hitting this very holistic, these two things that I'm glad you brought it up because, well, first of all, that name, Dorfman, it's probably like the name in sports psychology, baseball psychology especially, and just recently passed, I believe.
He passed in 2010.
Right, so like there was some highlights that came up about him again, and his stuff still gets circled back around, and that book is timeless. Feels like to this day. So thank you for sharing that because I think it shows just how holistic this player development thing is, and that development continues well into being a major league player already, not just in the minor leagues. And now, and the things you said about Edgar and Jamie Moyer stand out like a sore thumb. Like I tried to help build teams that were young and not very good. And often those two things are together. You're not good because you have a lot of young players trying to figure it out and they need the opportunity, but like that doesn't provide the opportunity for like that veteran in that clubhouse to be able to convey all the things you just said about how you need to be. And so a young player on a bad team with other young players doesn't get that range of experience. And it seems like you had it early and it would kind of serve you well throughout this whole time.
Oh, so. What a blessing. I got to tell you, I was so fortunate to have not just these guys as mentors, as players, but as humans, as husbands, as fathers. I mean, I remember Jamie's wife, Ficero's wife, Buhner's wife, Griffey's wife, Dan Wilson's wife going to pick them up at the airport with their kids in the car. I wasn't even married at the time. I didn't even have kids at the time, but I knew I wanted to do that and be like those guys. And, you know, coming full circle later on, once I had kids, my wife would emulate that behavior and bring along sometimes other wives with their kids as well. And so just not just as mentors, but as players, but also as leaders and as husbands and fathers.
Wow. That's and you have 5 children now, you said?
Yeah, 5 kids.
5 children now. And a partner, I'm sure. I think what gets slept on too is the experience of the partner in this major league journey where you're going from Seattle to Kansas City to Philly to New York. And especially when you get into not journeyman status, but when you get into this, I don't know where I'm going to end up kind of status. So I'm wondering, I'm sure that was a strong area of support for you through this whole journey, as most guys point to that as like there's a happy wife, happy life correlation, because Major League Baseball, that grind is rough.
Oh man, honestly, my wife's a badass. It's the most important decision I've ever made is who I chose to marry. And we met at Miami Sunset High School. She went to St. Brennan High School as well. But packing up apartments and houses and cars and getting kids, our kids would come to spring training for 6 weeks. And she was a teacher by trade that went to graduated from the University of Miami. But like seeing through the curriculum, 6 weeks of homeschooling the kids when they're younger. And just, again, the time when I said that she was pregnant and I got sent out, I had to go the next day. I had to go meet the team, you know, in AAA at the time, and she packs up the apartment pregnant. So I mean, the backbone, the support, and still continues to be, you know, the greatest person I know.
Amazing. So sounds like she has the title of Legend of Date as well, if I'm hearing this correctly.
Legend of Date, yeah.
That's awesome. So kind of getting into the back end of the career here, at what point do you start to feel, all right, we're getting near the end here? Do you hit a physical limitation? Do you hit a, like, where is the game kind of telling you, like, okay, it's yanking on you a little bit?
Yeah, so physically, I felt great. So I'm like sleeping in a hyperbaric chamber back then at the time, right? And I'm taking care of my body until that first season with Philly. It was 2009. I played the second half of the season all the way through the World Series with incredible pain. I played with this sports hernia. There was like a 5-centimeter tear in my abdomen. I could barely walk down the stairs. And I think that was the first time I had this surgery and I could barely walk. You know, throughout the season, just taking a bunch of pain meds and anti-inflammatories and stuff to get through this. And I think it's like this hard thing because to play this game at a high level, there's always the insatiable drive, the appetite to push yourself, but there's also this like strange delusional confidence that you have where you're facing the best pitchers in the world, and in your mind, you're like, that guy stinks. That's what you're thinking about him. Quite frankly, that's what he's thinking about you, because that's how it has to be. You don't realize you have that until you step away from the field and you turn on a major league game and you're watching this game and you're like, what was I thinking? That guy wasn't good. This guy's unbelievable. And so I think I started really missing my kids on the road. And I want to say it was like late 30s, 39-ish, like right around that last year in Philly. I was thinking, okay, I can see the end coming. But I do still love the feeling of the postseason. You go through 3 postseasons in a row. I'm chasing a ring at the time, too, because I'd been to the World Series but hadn't won the World Series. And so chasing a ring at the time. And I'm like, I know I can continue to be an effective player in, maybe a limited role, which is what happened in New York with the Yankees. They, played me against mostly righties and paired Andrew Jones and myself for the left field spot.
We've heard of him, Andrew Jones.
You've heard of Andrew Jones.
I grew up playing center field, so Andrew Jones, and watching the Braves on TBS. So Andrew Jones, that's a sacred name. So that's what a cool
great player.
What a cool experience. So okay, let's what based on your experience, like getting to the get like that World Series that that's this thing that's you're always playing for every organization. That's like the goal. What do you see as the most common themes of the teams that kind of break through and are in that contention? Like common themes amongst like real contending teams in the big leagues.
Common themes?
Yeah.
I think everybody pulling. You can have a group of core players. You have to have a group of core players that everybody's pulling in the same direction. You could have an outlier here or there who maybe is on his own program a little bit if you have enough of a solid insulated core of winning players. There's losing players on winning teams, and there's winning players on losing teams. And I think if you have enough players that are true winners, that care about the outcome of the game and the scoreboard and about their teammates and about driving themselves, there's always going to be a level of you have to take care of yourself. You have to want to be a master of your craft on a regular basis. But if you have enough players that care about themselves and bringing somebody else with them or bringing a couple of people with them, I think those guys become force multipliers. And the best teams that I've been on and been around, including the Dodger team, I'm in the front office with the Los Angeles Dodgers, we have a lot of those guys that take care of themselves, but also will reach out, lend a hand to like a younger player or somebody else to take them with them, making other people better.
I really want to get into that front office component that you mentioned there, but I guess to cap off the playing career side, favorite personal moments in a game for you, whether it be, height of your career, what moment stands out amongst all of them?
One moment? That's tough. But, I mean...
Or favorite?
Getting to the World Series in Philly, we celebrated. Jimmy Rollins hits a triple in the right center field off of Jonathan Broxton, and we walk it off, and it was a dream come true at the moment. You're getting to the World Series. I got hairs on my arm stand up. That moment is unforgettable. And, it's got to be the home runs in Yankee Stadium during the playoffs, facing Jonathan Johnson, tying it in the 9th, then walking it off in the 11th. I think the moments always revolve around winning, some type of greater good. I always thought like individual accolades are nice to have, but team accolades are, you cherish these moments with all of these other people that they're never going to forget either. And so it was just, I think those two moments really stand out.
Go ahead.
So I want to bring up this game during your time in Philadelphia. One of the greatest pitchers I ever saw play and I ever saw pitch live was Josh Johnson. And one of the greatest pitching performances in history was that Roy Halladay game, which was here in Miami. It gets often overshadowed how great of a pitching matchup and duel that was. So you're in the lineup for that game. Talk about how dominant he was, Halladay, but also how great of a matchup that was. I feel like Josh Johnson gets often forgotten. There are a lot of great pitchers in that era, but an underrated Marlin to me.
Josh Johnson, that was unbelievable. Elite stuff. He made it feel like the mound at Joe Robbie was not regulation because he was like a giant on top of the mound. Extension, the ball's on top of you. Multiple well above average pitches, can compete and could dot. And on our side, we had the late, great, Roy Halladay, another guy who was very strongly impacted by the work of Harvey Dorfman. Harvey mentored him as well. So Doc and I, became close, and we'd sit right behind each other on plane rides, and we'd talk all things Harvey and all things, kids and family, and just a tremendous human being. That performance, that's the most stressed out I've ever been on a baseball field, defensively, like the most stressed out.
Where were you playing?
Left field.
Okay.
And you could feel it happening, even though it wasn't, I don't remember like how many people were there. I don't remember any of that stuff. I just remember the hyper focus that there was nothing else going on other than this pitching performance, this pitcher's duel going back and forth. And you throw, caution to the wind on your side, on the offensive side, you're like, we have to win this game for Doc. And I think he's going to throw a perfect freaking game right now. So he did that against the Marlins. right here at Joe Robbie Stadium, and it was just unbelievable. The last play of the game, it was Castro's playing third base. There's a little hop in there that I don't think the camera picks up, that change of direction. People don't realize what an incredible play Castro made at third base and how freaking stressful it was to be behind him as he's catching the ball, and the ball takes that hop and he picks it up and fires across. I just remember being so elated. I've never been happier, for on a baseball field for someone else, just because it was Doc and nobody worked harder, and his journey up until that point was just incredible. And to be a native Miamian, if that's the word that we can use, but to be a native of the 305 and to be on the field, I know we wound up beating the Marlins, but it was just it's a historic moment in baseball history.
Finishing 305, finishing with 305 career home runs is really something, circling it back around. So I'm glad we brought up the Marlins connection, because this brand, Legends of Dade, is very much connected to the Marlins brand in those years. So what did the Marlins and do the Marlins mean to you, right? You were telling a story before you got on here, but you're this hometown kid, right? And you've always lived here, so this team has always been there. You played in the division a bunch, so you played here a bunch. What has kind of connecting these two things? It feels like the Marlins have played a background role to your entire career.
They really, really have. And if I could put a pin in that for 1 second.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, when you said 305 home runs, growing up in the 305, I told you about the posters on my wall. David Justice, George Brett, those guys. David Justice ended up with 305 career home runs as well. And George Brett, I think he had a lifetime 305 batting average. So that's just I didn't know any of it until I just remember, I retired, and I'm like, oh my God, I wound up with 305 home runs. That's because you're not really paying attention. But then later on, looking and seeing the two of your idols, the guys on your wall, ended up with 305 home runs and a 305 lifetime batting average. Pretty cool. But what the Marlins mean to me, we didn't grow up in baseball. My dad worked really hard, worked for Carnival Cruise Lines for the Arison family, and we would go to one spring training game a year at Bobby Maduro Stadium, at Miami State, Bobby Maduro Stadium. I watched the Orioles and the Yankees, preferably, hopefully. So the best paper I ever wrote in high school was an English paper and I gave this impassioned speech because there was a time in 1991 when if we showed up, if enough people showed up, two sellouts, the Yankees against the Orioles at Joe Robbie Stadium, we could get an expansion franchise if we showed enough interest. So I gave this impassioned plea. It was the best paper I ever wrote and the best speech I've ever given in this class. Nobody may even remember that, but I practiced this thing. I'm like, we have to go. I'm walking around Sunset High School saying, guys, everybody has to buy tickets and go to this game. And I'll never forget I had never been to a Major League game, ever. It was only on television or spring training at Miami, at Bob Maduro Stadium. I'd gone to Fort Lauderdale, too, to see Yankees in spring training. Those are the spring training. I'd never seen a big league stadium. And I'll never forget the feeling of walking up. We got tickets. My dad was like, all right, we're going to get tickets, but we're up in the nosebleeds. We're way up there. I could care less. I remember walking out and getting onto the turnstile there and looking down and seeing this multicolored orange clay with this perfectly manicured green grass. And I mean, when I was a kid, I was drawing while the teacher's going out. I'm drawing baseball fields. So that was a thing that I loved to do. It's still, every hair on my arm stands up. And it was one of the most incredible moments of my life to think we're going to get a Major League Baseball team. But seeing that field, it was breathtaking. I was mesmerized by it. Stayed for the entire game. Watched every inning. I couldn't believe that if anyone left. But there was a real buzz and passion. And I want to say we came out 50,000+ people to support that effort.
Wow. And so the thesis of that paper that you're saying would have been Miami needs a team. Now is the time to show support. That's funny because Giancarlo he's a master of going through the Wolfson archives and digging out little gems. I remember you showed me a Bob Greasy making a pitch as a Hall of Fame legend. Be like, here's why Miami needs a team, deserves a team. And then we've done the history and follow the history of, Dave Dombrowski and building that team from scratch, expansion draft and all of that stuff gets talked about a lot here. Did it ever come close to play for the Marlins? Did that ever come close to lining up?
So towards the end, I want to say in free agency they called, but
Yeah.
the resources were limited. And towards the end, I remember Jeffrey Loria, talking to my agent Seth Levinson, was also Mike Lowell's agent.
Yeah. Aces.
That's right, Aces. And he said, "Hey, if you guys are ever in a bind, we always have a spot on this team for Raúl Ibáñez." So, which is really classy thing to do. It never quite materialized. I always dreamt of getting an opportunity to play here. When that expansion draft was going on and all the scouts were around, and during the season and instructional leagues, and you're playing, you're playing for your team that you love, but you're really playing for 30. You're never playing for one. Somebody's always watching. So I remember dreaming of, I wonder if my name will get called in that expansion draft. And the Mariners wound up, I think, protecting me on the AAA roster, which meant somebody would have to take me to the big leagues, and I wasn't quite ready at the time. But yeah, this has always been, it's Miami, it's home.
It seems like a lot of teams and organizations have taken the stance of, we have a place for Raúl Ibáñez in our organization. You're now a member of the Dodgers front office, and which I want to get to after this, but it also feels like you've been in whenever a manager opening comes up, I feel like your name comes up often. And my sense, I don't know this for sure, my sense is that you oftentimes remove your name from that consideration. And I'm wondering if you don't have to break any news here, but explain that ability to kind of be like, oh no, I don't think, because so now you retire, now you're in the second phase of your career, and this skill set, I have to say, I would be in that group of thinking that skill set would play very well in that manager role. So how would you react to that?
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
I've been fortunate and blessed and humbled by the interest, year over year.
Over year.
Managerial. I'm very humble. I say that as humbly as I can. And it's always humbling because the manager is kind of there's the CEO that's running the baseball ops. There's, the president of baseball ops. There's the president on the business side. But the manager he's the guy running the team on the field. He's skipper. He's running massive payroll. So it's somebody offering you an opportunity to handing you the keys to the kingdom. So I don't take that lightly. And that's why I say it's a very humbling thing. There's a selfish component that we all have where you want to be part to go and do something special and unique and go through the grind with a group of 26 other men, probably more like 40-something, wind up through the course of the season, and to hoist a trophy at the end of the year and have a big parade. That selfish component is always there. The competitive drive, again, to be able to accomplish something collectively as a group and to be a member of that is always enticing, intriguing, and very, there's a really an allure to it, right? At the same time, what keeps me here is I've got 5 kids. I've got, 2 younger ones. One's in high school. My youngest one is, he's in middle school now. And so having lived that life, I know that it's a huge sacrifice on the family. And, I spent 2 decades doing that. So that's the yin and yang. That's true confessions on camera here. That's true confession. So selfishly, it'd be incredible to do it. What keeps me from diving in is the time commitment and the time away from your family.
Right. Well, I think it's gonna keep coming. So I think you're gonna have to keep developing that discipline to not pull that. But it sounds like it's connected. It sounds like it's for all the right reasons, and you have more than earned the ability to make your choice on that. But you have found a way to stay involved in the game formally in your post-baseball playing career retirement. You've spent some time with the commissioner's office, and then most recently, congratulations, you do have a World Series, right, as a front office member with the Los Angeles Dodgers. So what's your role with the Dodgers today as it stands?
The actual role is called Vice President of Baseball Development and Special Projects. And that would be my role. It's kind of an all-encompassing role. I spend quite a bit of time with Andrew and Brandon Gomes and with our coaching staff. I do visit the affiliates as well. Have quite a few conversations, always confidential with players as well. So it's, you're involved in draft processes and trade deadline processes and just kind of anything that you could do to make the organization better. It's the best organization on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. I'm working for and with the best humans on the planet, and there's no better place that I could imagine being a part of. They've give you free reign. They let you be who you are, and you always feel as a valued member of the team. And it's just been incredible lessons in leadership, and in, again, being part of something that's a greater good. Andrew always says that our North Star is winning. That's our North Star, and everything that we do is built around winning. So I couldn't ask for it to have been in a better place. I was a special assistant from 2016 to about 2020 with the Dodgers for about 5 years. Then I left to the commissioner's office. That was an incredible opportunity as well, where you're, I viewed it again as serving the game, great game, the great institution of baseball, and trying to, everything you're doing is trying to make the game, to grow the game, and to build bridges as well with the players. Commissioner Rob Manfred's a friend of mine, as our Pat Courtney and Noah Garden and Morgan Sword and Michael Hill, who used to be the president of baseball ops. Just tremendous people. Reed McPhail, Joe Martinez. I mean, I could go on all day. Just great human beings. I've been so fortunate to be around them.
So I want to take a second here and spotlight the Dodgers in particular, because as a competing member of another front office for a long time, they have been the model of how to do things in so many ways that I think it deserves its own flowers. And I think people connect it to, they have this payroll, and of course they could be good with that kind of payroll. And I think that just doesn't paint the picture at all with this organization. I think for the last 15 years, they have been the pioneers in a lot of player development items. They've been the model of how to run efficiently, but with money. Understanding that you hold the public trust of a whole region of Southern California and beyond. So Dodgers have a international fan base, especially now with Ohtani and all that stuff. But this is the organization at the top of the game, and I think it's a wide separation between them and everything else. They are actually ranked by The Athletic as the top front office in baseball by like a wide margin. And this elite organization decides that there's a role for you in a vice president role in this kind of like umbrella position that can have a broad range of impact. And I just want to point out how smart I think that is for an organization. The point, like the right kinds of organizations value exactly this. They value exactly that human connection to the player, that ability. And the Dodgers, they deserve a lot of credit. And they have my full respect. And Andrew Friedman has been like, when you're coming up as an executive in the game, I remember reading this book, The Extra 2%, and it was about the Rays and his time during the Rays and how they established, market inefficiencies and things like that. And then those processes applied to the Dodgers, just, it's like match gasoline, and then they've done what they've done. And then that roster is just a who's who of not only great players, but some of the best people in the game. Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Shohei Ohtani. I can go down this list forever. But their system, their player development system, I think is also top. Their amateur scouting, I think, is top notch. Their international scoutings, I think, are top notch. They're the best, most healthy organization in all of baseball. And here you are working for them, and they just got rewarded with another World Series. So congrats on the World Series.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's the North Star for so many people in professional baseball, and to be able to actually grab it is truly special. So
thank you. Yeah, I mean, again, Andrew, the way that he runs the operation on the baseball side, Brandon Gomes, Josh Burns, Billy Gasparino, Jeff McAvoy, Dave Roberts, and Mark Pryor, and Robert Van Scoyoc, every detail, no stone gets unturned. And yes, there are resources, but as you said, everything's about efficiency and collaboration and openness. And Andrew is amongst the most humble people I've ever been around. Wants no credit. If I say, hey, I work for you, he says with me. So he always makes everyone feel like their opinions are valued. You can reach him anytime. And he's a great, high character. The guys running it. I mean, Andrew and Brandon Gomes, just high character human beings, great dads and husbands and people. And, and you go to Stan Kasten and Mark Walter, who's just a phenomenal owner, and Lon Rosen, you just high character people that really deeply care, not just about winning, but about the people, and ultimately about the fans and the fan experience as well.
Yeah, I think people talk about Apple and all these other American brands. I think the Los Angeles Dodgers are about as like of a general brand, American brand, as like it's got to be one of the more prominent, one of the most better run organizations in the world. And this whole new component of this Asian presence and this Japanese, the hub. How many Dodgers fans are there in Japan now because of this whole, not just Ohtani, Yamamoto, Sasaki, and now South Korea? I just think we can go on about this for a while here, but it doesn't surprise me that organization puts you in a prominent position.
Thank you.
And so I've been asking all the questions. I wonder if anybody from the rest of the group has anything before we kind of land this thing, because we could talk here forever.
The only thing that stands out is, a lot stands out. But I played at FIU, and Lou Deneen was my strength coach, and everything that you heard about Lou Deneen is 100% on point. What a great strength coach, man! What a great human being. So, I love that you gave him his flowers as well, because I don't think outside of like the Miami bubble, Lou Deneen gets enough credit. But man, incredible strength coach, incredible person. He was a big part of my baseball career as well. So.
JC Perez, 2-time first team All-Dade.
Wow. I love it. I love it. And congratulations on that. And by the way, I can see the legs still. The legs are still there. So you working with Lou Deneen, you had to get strong legs. Lou would say things that I even put up these signs, made these signs in my gym that I still have till this day. But it's, he would say things like, let's get a little bit better. And you know why? You remember he used to say, you know why I'm always going to be successful? Because the world's full of average, brother. That's like how he'd start the day. And he'd tell you everything that you were doing that day and look you in the eye. And you're just like, oh, that's going to suck. He's like, we're going to go through it like a hot knife through butter. It's like, it's just a machine.
He used to open up mid-workouts, cans of tuna, and he'd have like 2 or 3 cans of
Remember that?
while you're working. You'd smell the tuna.
Smell the tuna.
Like old school, like
Yes.
hardcore working out and strength training. So yeah,
Amazing.
Great memories, man. Great dude.
Great dude. We got to check his mercury levels if he's still eating tuna. That's a lot of tuna. He used to eat the tuna and then stretch you after, and you're like, oh,
Yeah,
Lou,
like
man.
Lou,
Come-
man.
come-
Yeah.
Can you hold your breath while you're doing that?
Absolutely, but
But
great dude, man.
great.
I don't know where he's at now. Last time I checked, I think it was at Duke, maybe.
He's living in D.C. He was with the Crimson Tide for a few years on the basketball side, and I think his wife got a job in D.C., and now he's working out of D.C., and I think he's just working with private clients, but amazing. There was a few times that Lou had to drive me home because, you had baby, you're not sleeping, and I, could barely walk, fatigued. And there was a couple of times he walked over and he's like, you doing all right, Raul? He's like, you want me to call 911, brother? Like dead serious. And I'm like, Lou, when you say that, it makes it way worse. But he had to drive me home. But he took you to the edge, pushed you past it, and so you always knew that there was more in you.
Yeah, 100%. And he was always serious about it too. There was no screwing around with him. Yeah,
Yes.
great dude though. You always knew he cared. He
cared.
like deeply. Yeah,
Yes.
very good dude.
I'm
Yes.
glad we touched that because, and maybe it's a good place to finish, because I think I see a lot of player development arcs from like players signing and seeing, what breaks well, what doesn't, how many talented players that never make it, that were the most talented players around. And I think it's the moment where they process just how strong they need to be to play this really grown man game of baseball over 162, hopefully 180 plus games plus spring training.
Right.
Like when that strength light bulb comes on, I see the direct correlation is like that's when their careers can really, and the guys that don't appreciate it fully, they kind of either get injured early or fall by the wayside. And I feel like, I'm sure you would argue it's part of your core reasons why you were able to play deep in your career in 17 years of service.
Like that, the strength component took me to a totally different level because philosophically, I always thought if the stronger I get, the more high quality reps I can get. And I could swing way more often as a guy who liked to hit. So I could take 500 swings a day, and somebody else could take 100 swings a day. And out of my, 500 swings, I could have most of them could be high quality. And I just always thought the compounded effect of doing that day after day after day after day after day, year after year, the cumulative effect of that, I always felt was like dropping a drop of water in a bucket. Eventually, the bucket overflows and you unlock yourself and you reach a totally new level, totally new heights. And that was the way that I viewed it. And thanks to Lou Dineen, I was able to secure that. I mean, there was like once a week he had these sets at 20. You remember that? Like 20 reps. Like you're like carrying around 300 plus pounds, 400 pounds sometimes, and repping out 20, which was completely felt insane at the time. But extra inning games, late in the season, I would always go back to that mentally. That's right. Dog days of August. You're exhausted. You would think, I'm supposed to be successful. I have to be successful because I earned it. You make your season in the off season.
That feels most relevant to me of all things scouting Latin American players, for example. Like there's this moment where they realize that like how strong you need to be and how much longer you needed to start that journey to get to where you want to be. Right. It's not an overnight, one off season accomplishment. It's this compounding thing over many years. And some guys find that too late, or they find it out as a result of injury. But it's a non-negotiable in this game, no matter what. You could be 5'7" and you could be 6'11". If you're not strong, you're not playing in this game for very long, and that's it's a core tenet. So I don't know. I could go here talking for 3 hours, and maybe this conversation deserves a volume 2. But this has been one of my favorite things we've filmed here. Period. Full stop.
Thank you.
And whenever you want to collaborate on anything moving forward, we are more than welcome. But we do deeply believe that you are a legend of Miami-Dade, and therefore fit squarely in our parameters for this show. So thank you for being gracious enough to take this much time to come and talk with us.
Thank you, guys. And thank you guys for doing this. Again, as a native of Miami-Dade County, and as somebody who loves the city that I came from, lived and grew up in, and still live in and raised my family in, I want to thank you guys it's an honor for me to have been here and to be a part of this. And I'm deeply honored and impressed by the work that you guys are doing and the reason that you're doing it. It's really important and impactful, not just for the grown-ups, but equally and even more important for the next level, the younger generation, so that they can see and touch the dreams. And the work that you guys are doing is allowing that to happen. So thank you.
Thank you. I think we leave it right there.
One time for the legend of the day, Raúl Ibáñez.